Every once in a while, people suggest me some point-and-click adventure games to check out. Last year one of those games was Barrow Hill, Curse of the Ancient Circle. I checked it out and thought that it looked interesting and could even be fun, so I picked it up and made a let's play of it and later its sequel, The Dark Path. Both developed by Shadow Tor Studios and published by Iceberg Interactive. In this video I'm gonna talk about both of these games since they are very similar. And I'm gonna say it right now. Unfortunately, neither of these two games are particularly good. Especially the sequel. But why is that? Well, let's find out. My name is Siperos and these are my thoughts on Barrow Hill, Curse of the Ancient Circle and its sequel, The Dark Path. Starting from the first game, Curse of the Ancient Circle, released in 2006. The game takes place in Barrow Hill, which by the way is based on real geographical locations in Cornwall, England. An archaeological excavation is, or was taking place at Barrow Hill's burial mound and large Stonehenge-like rocks, and the locals were not happy about it, saying that the place should be left alone. Strange things started to happen and the people started disappearing. It's up to us to investigate what is happening to the local people, why the archaeologist Professor Conrad Morse had created so much unrest and hostility among the local community, and unfold the mystery of Barrow Hill. Both Barrow Hill games are first-person adventure games, so we don't see our protagonist. We know nothing about him actually. Not even his name because it's never mentioned. And he never talks. I guess this was done simply because the developers wanted us to be immersed to the game more, making us think that it's us at Barrow Hill. And that's fair enough. Even though I usually prefer to see our adventure game protagonists with a name, personality and voice acting and such, I don't mind this more immersive first-person approach either, especially if the rest of the game is good. But sadly I must say that this game is okay at best. When I saw the game's trailer, I was expecting some goofy characters that look like those South Park characters with poorly animated live-action faces of real people which so bad that it's good level of voice acting. And I did kinda get that, but not enough in my opinion. I was actually having a hard time seeing whether the developers wanted this game to be taken seriously or not. Because on one hand it has creepy atmosphere, but not scary, using cheap jump scares, and there's surprising amount of deep local legends, history of druidism and superstitions to be discovered and read about in the game, which I did find somewhat interesting. I don't know if any of it is based on actual legends and folklore of the region in real life, or that how much of it is made up. And on the other hand, the game has some very silly stuff that I simply couldn't take seriously. Like this guy.
It wasn't there, but then it came up. I heard it. They were... and it... oh my god! The power went.
I wish the game had more characters like this. And then, the silliest thing in the entire game, or any adventure game that I have played so far, the threat that is looming in the woods. Here we come to the spoiler territory, I suppose. The threat in this game is... rocks. Yes, large rocks that kill people, by turning them into piles of ash when touched. And they are apparently very fast too. I mean, just look at this. This is hilarious. Isn't that some of the silliest things you have ever seen in a game? The story of this game is like from a low-budget B-movie with a dumb plot, which I love. I just wished the developers went even further with this and made the entire game over the top from start to finish as a parody of horror genre and its clichés. That would have been fun, but I don't think they went far enough, assuming that was their goal, which I don't think it was in the end. The game's graphics are not that interesting to look at either, since all the locations are just still images with nothing moving in the background unless you directly interact with something, making the world seem lifeless. Which does admittedly fit the atmosphere since the place is empty, for the most part, but the point is that it's not the most interesting looking game. The puzzles are okay and logical. I didn't have too many problems with them for the most part. I think that if anything made the game a little harder, it would be the fact that it was non-linear, so you didn't need to do things in any specific order. There was no straight path to follow, so to speak, which is not a bad thing. But there is one puzzle that I was really struggling with. It's the juice puzzle. You're supposed to make a juice, or was it called fruit offering, and make a juice cocktail out of sodas of 4 different fruit and berry flavors by using a drink blender. You're supposed to mix the right flavors in a specific order, I believe. However, you don't even need to use all 4 flavors, so some of the sodas I was carrying were useless. And you needed to pour 4 doses of juice into the mixture. Back then it strongly looked like the game did not have any clues hinting at which flavors to use and how many times. So before I started recording this, I went to read a guide to make sure that I wasn't talking bollocks. And apparently there was a very strong hint in a scientific report found in Conrad's briefcase. So yeah, there was a crucial clue provided by the game and I simply missed it. But I didn't know that back then, and so, because of that, I went with a desperate route and tried out all possible juice combinations using 4 different flavors. In the end, I didn't figure it out myself, but one of the viewers, who also hadn't played the game himself, did give me multiple juice mixture suggestions, and one of them happened to be correct. That was really the only one I was struggling with, and even that was because I wasn't thorough enough. Overall, an okay game, like I said, but forgettable. Now, let's talk about the sequel, Barrow Hill, The Dark Path, released in 2016. Now, this game is really the main reason why I wanted to make this video in the first place, because The Dark Path, in my opinion, is a good example of a sequel that takes 1 step forward and 2 steps back. This is an adventure game I got really frustrated with. But let's start with the positives, whatever little positives the game has. First, the graphics. While the game doesn't improve the graphics in a huge technological way, the locations are still made of still images, but at least this time there is some movement in the background, like clouds in the sky, leaves falling in the woods, and there's fire effects in one location, for example. Very simple, but yet effective to make the world feel more real. Also, the characters you run into the game are 3D this time, instead of poorly animated FMV characters. But I think it's really about a matter of taste which one you prefer. Personally, I like the first game's poorly animated FMV characters better. They are more fun to look at. The second thing the game does better in my opinion is the story. The game takes us back to Barrow Hill 10 years later after the events of the first game. We are still playing as the same guy from the first game. The service station / motel has been abandoned, and it's mostly used as a memorial for those who disappeared 10 years ago. However, 3 young college students, who started their own cult, The Dark Path, has come to Barrow Hill. One of them is looking for her brother who went missing at Barrow Hill 10 years ago and wants answers, turned into supernatural methods by doing a ritual of some sort. Things however go wrong, and some mysterious power is set loose and is now after the youngsters. This time it's not fast-moving killer rocks, but a spirit of a witch called Bybin, who, as far as I know, is not a reference to a real-life historical witch, legend or myth, so she's made up. She really made the game remind me of the Blair Witch Project. The story overall is not great or even memorable, but it's more interesting compared to the first game. Plus, Bybin herself becomes annoying really fast. She might make you jump the first couple of times when she suddenly appears and disappears while you're moving in the woods, but it becomes very old very fast. And she does nothing to you, so there is no reason for you to be scared of her or avoid her. You can't really die in this or in the first game. Oh yes, I forgot to mention that in the first game, if you go to one of those killer rocks that just stand there blocking your way and touch them, you turn to ash too and quote-unquote die. But you continue from right before you touched it, so literally 0 progress is lost, and thus death is absolutely meaningless. Bybin is the same here. Except that instead of turning you into ash, she teleports you to a specific location in the woods. Now to the worst parts of the game. Oh man, where to even start from? There's actually so many things that I had problems with that I'm not gonna go through all of them. I'm just gonna mention some of them. Let's start with the puzzles. Some of the puzzles in this game are just badly designed in my opinion. One puzzle that I remember having hard times with was the movie editing puzzle on a laptop. I have a couple of problems with it. First, I needed to collect a certain number of SIM cards, each containing a video clip. There was, I think, 8 video clips in the game in total, but in the video editor there was 9 video slots. And, after finding all 8, the game didn't tell me that I had collected all the clips I needed. So, naturally, for a long time, I thought we were missing one more clip. I only found out later after taking a peek at a walkthrough during my Let's Play that there is only 8 clips. Then we had to place the clips in the right order to make the short video of them. Sounds easy, right? Just watch each clip individually and connect the dots. It was really hard to determine in which order certain events shown in the clips happened. So, for that, I had to pick at the walkthrough again, just to learn what the right order is. Secondly, it was a pointless puzzle. The point of the puzzle was to convince us, the character we were playing as, that there was some weird spooky stuff going on in Barrow Hill. As if we already didn't know that since the first game when the protagonist was in Barrow Hill 10 years ago. Or after we saw Bybin very soon after we had arrived. After we had completed the video, one of the college students called us saying,
"You've seen it, yeah? You've seen the footage? You wouldn't have believed me before. There was something there in the farmhouse."
How did he know to call us at that exact time when we had finished editing the video? He wasn't with us, so he couldn't have seen it. Simple. Because the plot told him to. Speaking about the plot, that's another problem that I have with this game. The plot is restricting the player and their actions. The game is forcefully linear, unlike the first game. More linear storyline and puzzle progression in adventure games don't bother me, but if the plot prevents you from going somewhere where you know you must go, or doing something, even if logically there is nothing stopping you, then there's a design flaw. For example, this path here. As you can see, there is nothing, absolutely nothing blocking our way to that path into the woods, which leads us to the radio station at the swamp. This path is one of the first things you see when you start the game, by the way. At first I thought we couldn't go there because we had no flashlight, or torch as they call it here, and it's too dark in the woods, so that's understandable. We find a torch, still can't go there. We need a map. Okay, fine, sure. Soon we find not one, but two different but good maps, very early on in the game. The one we can see on a phone we pick up, and a Barrow Woods map leaflet. Surely it must be one of those, right? Haha, silly you, of course not. The map you need is this. This f***ing thing. Just why? We had a perfectly good and accurate map showing where the radio station is. It was almost infuriating to see this clear open path for the most of the game since the beginning, but the game simply didn't give us the option to go there until we found this crappy drawing. At least in the first game there was always an obstacle or something preventing you from going somewhere, namely the killer rocks. Then there's multiple other small things that annoyed me, like how we couldn't use our bare hands or even the crowbar I had to remove the grating from the grill to get the glasses out, and how we needed to find a specific tin can and a specific mug for something. Even though, as far as I could tell, there was nothing special about them, and there were dozens of other tin cans and mugs lying around almost everywhere that you, as far as I could tell, had no reason not to pick up and use instead. But no, it had to be that specific tin can and mug. All of these things and more combined made a very frustrating experience for me. So much so that around the end of the game I started to peek at the walkthrough more often. Not only because I was stuck, but also because I was just so annoyed at that point that I just wanted to end the game as fast as possible. So I have a very hard time recommending either of these two games. Barrow Hill, Curse of the Ancient Circle is okay, but doesn't really do anything exceptionally well. Puzzles are okay, though uncreative. Story and characters are forgettable, and large rocks are simply not scary. It's funny if anything. Actually, I think the best way to describe the game's story is this. It's like from one of those Stephen King sillier movies where he tries to make rocks scary. Just like he tried with balloons in It and corn in Children of the Corn. If the game was made more as a parody of horror genre and was more over the top with wacky characters with so bad that it's good voice acting, it could have been at least memorable if not great. It's not a bad adventure game, but there's so many better, funnier and scarier ones out there to recommend instead. Dark Path on the other hand was just frustrating to play through. While graphically more pleasant looking and has a slightly more interesting story and antagonist, the game fails in puzzle design in many areas. And the plot is restricting the player freedom, preventing them from doing things they logically should be able to. I honestly can't recommend it for either point-and-click adventure game fans or even horror game fans. I know that Shadow Tor Studios has developed more games, although only these two can be bought on Steam, and they seem to be working on other titles, so I doubt this is the last time I'll play their games. I just hope they have learned from their mistakes in the Dark Path and improved their craft. So, those were my thoughts on Barrow Hill, Curse of the Ancient Circle, and its sequel, The Dark Path. What are your thoughts on these games? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.